We're scheduled now to have taking over and taking charge of the next hour of our show, Dr. Frances Botkin and Dr. Paul Youngquist. Frances, are you in the house?
She should be.
Yes, I can see her. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
I was going to ask for you next.
Nice to see you guys. Marcus.
Hi there.
Well,
Mwah. All the way back to you.
thanks so much.
So I'm handing over to you both now, and you can talk a little bit about what you do, your involvement with the Charleston Maroons, and then go right into your panel discussion, your roundtable discussion.
Okay.
Over and out.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Fran Botkin, and I'm so happy to be here today. I want to first thank Colonel Kim Douglas and the Charlestown Maroon Council and community for welcoming us here today. I also want to thank Flavius and Franco for doing all the technology, and to Fofi and Marcus for emceeing, and Fofi for putting together this program. Thank you so much. We'd also like to thank our participants and our audience for taking the time to be here with us, to join us here. Today, we are going to honor Colonel Frank Lumsden's vision of an Indigenous community without borders, upon which he founded this conference and festival 12 years ago today. It's also the theme of our panel and the theme of today. It turns out that this digital format serves Colonel Frank's international vision as it brings together local and global people who might not otherwise have all been here today in this place, in this time, in this way. So we are going to offer two related panels. The first one will discuss the ways that the conference and festival has through the years informed its participants' work. And the second will discuss how this conference and festival advances Colonel Frank's vision, especially in light of current events in our world and how these events have shaped this vision. So Paul.
Hey, thank you, Fran. I just want to agree with Fran. Thank everybody for showing up, for taking an interest in the conference. It's so good to see so many people after so long. We miss you and we love you madly. Thank you for being here. We, meaning me and Fran, but also all of our participants, usually come to Charlestown to celebrate Quao Day. Today, thanks to the miracle of this modern technology, Flavius, Franco, thank you. Charlestown comes to us. So we really are, as Fran suggested, pursuing this virtual notion of an Indigenous community without borders. So, no further ado, let's get on to our first panel. We have asked our panelists, there are 4 of them this time, to respond to the following question. How has your involvement with the conference shaped, informed, or transformed your work? So we get a sense of the work that the conference has been doing over the last 12 years now. And I think we'll start with Isis. Over to you.
Thank you, Paul. How are you?
I'm good. You look
good.
That's
so good. That's good. And hi, Fran. Nice to see you.
Hi. Now that I have you all on gallery view, I can see you all, and it's so wonderful to see you.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Thank you.
It's good to be seen. Hi there, Rebecca. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me focus. All right, so greetings to all. I am Dr. Isis Semaj Hall. I'm a UE Mona lecturer in Caribbean literature and popular culture. And I'm broadcasting to you live from Jamaica. I'm grateful for this opportunity to commune with the Quao celebrators and all supporters of the Charlestown Maroon community today. Now, during these revolutionary times where we fight for justice for Black people and demand that the world recognize that Black lives do matter, I'm particularly grateful to be here in a virtual roundtable honoring the Maroons of Jamaica. The connections are palpable, it seems now more than ever. I have been attending the Maroon Conference at Asafo Yard in the hills near Buff Bay for 4 years. Unsure of what I would encounter in the hot respite near the river, I was humbled by the open access experience of being a part of the Maroon celebration. The partnership between the community in Charlestown, the academics worldwide, the spirit, and the environment made for a gathering like no other. In fact, it was more than a gathering. It was community building, manifested by a shared desire to guarantee a maroon future. For this, I am grateful to the organizers, of course, and I'm grateful also to all attendees. As I think back on my participation over the years, there's no doubt that the space itself has pulled me back, in a sense, cradling me in a cultural history, but it also pushed me forward critically and creatively. In 2016, when I first participated, I presented on the maroon elements of Marlon James' 2009 novel, The Book of Night Women. And the following year, I presented on Down Sound's Maroon Rhythm and how Jamaica's popular music sought to digitize a maroon sound. In 2018, I presented a praise song or a praise poem to the Maroons' Women Rebels. I explored the mythical, natural, and supernatural maroon women who could not be contained, colonized, or fully comprehended, or even really fully marooned. I shared my work that considered the rebel women as presented in Richard Dingo Dingwall's Nanny for a Cup of Coffee poem, Jamaica's poet laureate Lorna Goodison's poem Nanny, and Inez Prodicimi Rivera's poem Rebel Women of Hispaniola and Beyond. And last year, in 2019, I collaborated with my good friend Gavs Borg of Equinox to share what was a culmination of what the Maroon Conference has opened me up to, not just as an academic, but as a creative practitioner of sound. We presented what we called a sonic uprising, meant to lead the listener on a narrow footpath into the remembered rhythm of Africa in the New World, palpable in the heart story of the hinterlands and audible in the sound waves of the diaspora's shores. After 4 gatherings around drum, fire, and words nestled in the fertile mountains, I felt my voice begin to change. After 4 years of discovering Maroon language and Maroon sound spirituality, I felt compelled to dig deeper into my own hinterlands of mind. This is the strength that I have gained from the Charlestown Maroon Conference Festival. My work has transformed from solely analytical to decidedly balanced, both critical and creative. So I give thanks for the opportunity to share then and to share now. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Isis. Let's turn now to Rebecca.
Oh, your sound.
Thank you. Is this okay? Can you hear me now? Okay, can folks hear me okay?
Yes, you're good, you're good.
Okay. Well, hello everybody. I want to thank you for the privilege of speaking with you today. Big thanks to the organizers and my fellow panelists and everybody listening to this broadcast. It's definitely an honor to be speaking today on Quao Day. So my name is Dr. Rebecca Schneider, and this would have been my 4th year participating in the International Charlestown Maroon Conference. And I was asked to speak briefly on how Maroon research has shaped my research and my teaching. And let me just be clear, it has changed everything. So I hope to share a couple specific examples of that. My field is English literature, and my current research focus is on the 18th century Caribbean. This research for me has involved locating archival fragments that demonstrate Black resistance to colonial occupation and dehumanization. And to echo some of what Isa said, this sort of work remains as important in our contemporary moment as it does in the 18th century. So in this archival research, I then advocate for reading these records as literature in order to center Black experiences, Black colonial experiences, in a time period where neither enslaved people nor free people of color were writing very many novels, poems, plays in the English language. I've benefited immensely from bringing some of this archival evidence into my conference papers from year to year, and I've gotten lots of useful and critical feedback about how to contextualize these documents within the living history of Maroon peoples. I first heard about the Jamaican Maroons in 2013 in the class that I took from Paul Youngquist, who's been involved with this conference almost from day one. And so I have to give him credit for introducing me to Maroons broadly speaking. I've been lucky enough to be mentored and advised by Paul these past 7 years that I've been at University of Colorado. This fall, I'll start a new position as a visiting assistant professor at Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado. The first year that I participated in the annual conference was in 2016, and that was the same year as Colonel Lumsden's internment. And although I never met Colonel Frank in person, I ended up dedicating my PhD dissertation to him because it just seemed that there were so many things that he set in motion, including this conference, that ultimately impacted the entire direction that I would end up pursuing in my research and my career, in many ways in my teaching as well. So here's 3 ways that the conference and Maroon research has shaped or transformed my work. And this is both in my research and my teaching. So first and foremost, I have to say that it humbled me. And to expand on that a little bit, doing research among the Jamaican Maroons and centering Maroon history in this 18th century literary study that my work has turned to has snapped me out of a US or even a British centered approach to scholarship. Maroon research has given me other experts to cite and even to invite into my classroom. Mama G has spoken to my students. Jasmine Lee Johnson, some of you might remember from past conferences, has spoken to my students. And so to center these other experts with other knowledge traditions has been really meaningful, I think, for my students as well as for my own research. In addition to humbling me and snapping me out of this US or British centered focus, the Maroon Conference and Maroon Research brought me to Jamaica. And it's important to note that there's archival research to be done in Jamaica, just as there is to be done in London or Liverpool as these perceived centers of knowledge production. And lastly, Maroon research has allowed me to center the living descendants of the 18th century subjects that I study. So any scholars who work on historical time periods can start to feel insulated from their work as having a contemporary or relevant impact. And Maroon research has, again, snapped me out of that as well. It's brought urgency to my work and it's allowed me to remember the living legacy of the resistance and the resilience that I'm so interested in tracing in these archival materials. Thank you.
Great, Rebecca, thank you. Can you tell I'm proud of her? Isn't that marvelous? Let's move on to Tracy. Tracy Stewart, could you tell us a little bit about your experience? Tracy, can you unmute?
Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. So I am Tracy Stewart, an ethnomusicologist and predoctoral fellow at the Carter G. Woodson Institute of African American and African Studies at the University of Virginia. So first, thank you so much for the organizers, the Charlestown Maroon Council, Fran and Paul, for all the work that you do. And thank you to the memory of Colonel Lumsden, without whom I would not be coming back and back and back again and again. My interest in Jamaican Maroon music and culture was sparked by what had become an ongoing theme in my personal life and intellectual pursuits, one of belonging. I was compelled by the desire to locate points of connection between African people on the continent and in the diaspora through music, a rhythm to be precise. As a Fulbrighter in 2012-13, I became emotionally taxed after months of trying to make those connections because that task was deceptively complex, both socially and intellectually. Sadia Hartman captured some of my feelings in her 2007 monograph, Lose Your Mother, where she writes, quote, "I was the proverbial outsider, old and new world stamped my face, a blend of peoples and nations and master and slave is long forgotten. In the jumble of my features, no certain line of origin could be traced. I was a stranger from across the sea. After all, a Black face didn't make me kin." I could argue that the Black American and Jamaican Maroon historical trajectories share some aspects in common, but what had drawn me to Maroon history, culture, and music was the conviction that they possess an ethnic and spiritual connection to the Akan Ashanti people of Ghana, a connection that I was unable to claim. However, what has emerged for me as more significant than whether or not I can claim with certitude a specific geographical or ethnic African connection was learning about the world views and the sociocultural and political perspectives that drive how and why Jamaican Maroons draw those connections. My evolution was pleasantly inevitable because of opportunities like this conference that allow me to build on my ideas with Maroon and non-Maroon scholars. Colonel Lumsden, Colonel Douglas, and this conference, and the Maroon community entirely, have led me to reorient my work. I attended the conference for the first time as an observer in 2013. My project began as a search for belonging and connection, which I attempted to apprehend solely and very narrowly through rhythmic detail. But in the intervening years, I've developed a more nuanced approach to thinking about the role that music plays in Jamaican Maroon efforts to define and to articulate who they are and why they matter. Maroon music is used to make implicit and explicit claims as a mode of sociocultural and economic development and political representation. The time that I've spent with Charlestown Maroon community members at the conference and on other occasions has revealed the adept, sophisticated ways that they employ their complete cultural complex to strategically enhance their community's future and its fortune. For the record, this is no less true for members of the Accompong Town, Moortown, and Scotts Hall community celebrations. But the generative discussions and the relationships that have been forged in and around Charlestown's Asafo Yard have been influential in my personal and intellectual development as a Black scholar over the last 8 years. What makes the Charlestown International Maroon Conference uniquely valuable is that it brings scholars from around the world to this one place, not only to talk about their own work and to learn about the work of colleagues from various academic institutions in Jamaica, the US, the UK, and the wider Caribbean, but it provides the opportunity for us to listen and to learn from Maroons themselves, the very people we posit at the center of our work. I've learned, as I hope my colleagues have or will, that by devoting our attention to what members of the Maroon community have to say, and by honoring and respecting their contributions in this and other settings, we allow ourselves to be intellectually and spiritually enriched. Thanks.
Thank you, Tracy. That was really well said. Let's finish up this brief panel with our final speaker, John.
Hi, everyone. Again, I just want to say thanks as well for being invited to speak here, and like a number of the other panelists, to just point to, this is such a moment to speak to Quao's legacy, as we see a lot of people around the country and around the world sort of taking up some of the unfinished work that he and others started. So I'm just really grateful to have a chance to speak. As Paul said, my name is John Savini. I'm a writer, activist, and PhD candidate in anthropology at the University of Virginia. Given the atmosphere in the US and with Jamaica's own pattern of extrajudicial police killings on my mind, I also just want to note that I'm an abolitionist, and that's a project that I really see as deeply resonant with that of building a borderless indigenous community, and I'd love to get into that if we have time to talk about that today. But so my research sits at the intersections of environmental politics, race, and indigenous studies. I'm interested in trying to better understand the legacies of the plantation across the Americas. My dissertation centers on the different ways that Maroons mobilize indigenous identity alongside diasporic affiliations. I'm interested in how that identification is both shaped by and opens up a space for intervention in Jamaica's racial political landscape and that of the Americas more generally. In conversation with Black and Indigenous studies, my dissertation also looks at some of the different environmental philosophies that Maroons nurture, considering how those differ from conservationists in Jamaica and elsewhere, and how sort of at the most abstract, those philosophies speak to like a different kind of politics or politics in a different register and maybe even a different way of being human altogether. I came to Jamaica in 2016 to get a kind of sideways perspective on how the plantation continues to feature in contemporary landscapes and social life in relation to Virginia, which is where I live. I came to Maroon community specifically through a kind of serendipitous connection to Clive Marshall and Accompong, who recently passed a few years ago, so I just wanted to kind of shout him out. Knowing that I also came knowing that Maroons have hosted sort of a generations-long conversation, right, about how best to live beyond or outside the lives of the plantation, and to see how I might ethically learn from those conversations. In connection to that, the conference has, shaped my research and my thinking in so many ways. For one, like a lot of my political commitments and my sense of what an ethical world looks like comes from firsthand experience living in Maroon communities, and I've been really grateful to see both historically and in the present how Maroons sort of embody different ways of having a community than those we see in many other places across the world. People I've met at this conference, including, Colonel Marcia Douglas, Captain Rodney Rose, Gaman Mamaji, a lot of people that are here, Kalan, Akila Jaramungi, Leslie Gail Atkinson. These people have really shaped how I think about the world in profound ways. Anthropology, my chosen discipline, has a lot of flaws, but it does rightfully insist that all thought is collective. And if my dissertation is worth a damn, it's in large part because of the folks I've had a chance to talk to at this conference. So a million thanks to everyone who's organized this and attended. This conference reminds me again and again that knowledge, especially the kind we need to build a better world, is best made democratically and often to be found outside the university. Moreover, this conference has helped me to imagine more ethical modes of research. Again, anthropology has a history of sort of extracting indigenous knowledge with little care in terms of reciprocity to that community. So this conference really models a mode of engagement that insists upon accountability to the community at stake, both in terms of sharing potential insights, claims, arguments, these sorts of things, but also in terms of materially redistributing funds. And I've learned a lot from Paul and Fran and the other organizers about that over the last few years. In that vein, let me just conclude by saying that I'm eager to keep working with y'all and the Maroon Council and other conference attendees to keep building on this, to imagine research that's oriented towards benefiting the Maroon community at large in Charlestown specifically. Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John, and thank all of our panelists on this first panel for participating. In some cases, year after year in the conference, coming together, bringing their various perspectives, and I think most importantly, as John has emphasized, being open to learning. And one of the things that's exciting to me about the conference year after year is how much I learn from different perspectives and how that learning transforms the way I teach and write, interact, and the communities that I want to be part of and build into. The last 4 presentations, just a small sampling of the kind of work that gets presented year after year at the conference, and we're very grateful for those participants and their wise words. I'd like to suggest that we move on to the second panel now and save some time at the end for robust discussion together between all of our panelists and also all of our viewers and other participants. So I'm going to turn things over now to Fran, who is going to introduce the second panel. Thank you.